They believe that the statement, "nor did they crucify him," means that Jesus was not even put on the cross. From this simple statement, the entire story regarding Judas looking like Jesus, despite the fact that Judas is not mentioned once in the entire verse, is born. The correct interpretation of the verse, as we see it, runs as follows. The beginning of the verse states the assertion of Jesus' opponents that they killed him. The rebuttal to this is made in the words, "They slew him not, nor did they crucify him." There were two prevalent theories about the crucifixion about in Jesus' time. There was the first one that believed that Jesus had been killed prior to the crucifixion by some means, and his body was placed upon the cross. The words, "they slew him not," are a rebuttal of this theory. The second theory was that Jesus had been crucified, in other words, died under the torture of the cross itself. And the rebuttal of this is found in the words, "nor did they crucify him." The word crucify does not simply mean to be put on the cross, but means to be killed through crucifixion, in the same way that saying Mr. Smith was murdered does not mean that an attempt of murder was made upon him, but that death was inflicted through that attempt. Then if Jesus was neither slain nor killed through the cross, what actually happened? Elaboration is found in the succeeding verse, in the succeeding words. "He was made to appear to them like one crucified." These words clearly and categorically indicate that Jesus only appeared to be dead upon the cross to the onlookers, while in fact he was not so. The word "he" in this statement cannot refer to Judas or to anyone else, for nobody else other than Jesus is mentioned in the verse. The next question arises as to why there is so much debate over the events of the crucifixion. The answer is given next when it says, "And those who differ therein are certainly in a state of doubt about it. They have no certain knowledge thereof, but only pursue a conjecture, and they did not convert this conjecture into a certainty." As the body of Jesus was never found, it was never absolutely certain as to whether they killed him or not. The aim that Jesus' opponents had in putting him on the cross was to prove that he was a false prophet, in accordance with the words of the Old Testament in Deuteronomy. "He who hangs upon wood is an accursed of God," chapter 21, verse 23. The final conclusion drawn by the Quran is that, on the contrary, as Jesus was saved from death on the cross, and as he bore patiently and steadfastly his sufferings, he was not made an accursed of God, but was exalted towards God. This evidently means spiritual exaltation, and not physical exaltation, as the majority of Muslims believe. To be physically exalted towards God is meaningless, for God is not a physical being. Having established that Jesus did not die on the cross, the question is naturally raised as to whether he lived a normal human life and died a normal human death. Upon this, the Quran is quite clear. The Messiah, son of Mary, was only a messenger being prophet. Verily, the messengers before him have passed away, and his mother was a truthful woman. They both used to eat food. See how he explains the signs of their good, and see how they are turned away. The verse begins by defining Jesus as a messenger of God. It then goes on to state a rule that is rooted in history, that all messengers who had come before Jesus had died. The conclusion the verse points to is that Jesus, like all other messengers before him, has died as well. The statement with regard to Jesus that they both used to eat food emphasizes that their lives depended on physical nourishment, and as in heaven there is no physical food, they cannot be taken to be physically alive in heaven. And this verse, in my opinion, is as much aimed towards Muslims as to any other people. The question is further raised now as to where Jesus went after the crucifixion. Does the Quran support the view that Jesus travelled to Kashmir? When we look carefully, we find that it is stated in the Quran that God gave Jesus and Mary shelter on an elevated land of green valleys and springs of running water. Chapter 23, verse 51. Anyone who knows the geographical landscape of Kashmir can positively affirm that this is a perfect description of it as an elevated land of green valleys and springs of running water. Indeed, Kashmir is a meshwork of beautiful valleys. The whole area is often described as paradise. Rivers flow through the land, and the subsequent vegetation in the valleys is some of the richest in the world. It is very interesting to note that the verse that I have just quoted does not simply say that only Jesus was given shelter in this land of green valleys, but also states that his mother Mary was as well. It is well known that Mother Mary also disappeared almost at the same time as Jesus did. Nobody knows where Mary went. In fact, the Catholic Church has gone so far as to create the festival called the Feast of the Day of Assumption, where it is so called because the Catholic Church assumes that as Mary also disappeared at the same time that Jesus did, she too must have ascended to heaven. The Quran, on the other hand, asserts that Mary went with Jesus to this land of green valleys and springs of running water, which we can now identify as Kashmir. But as with Jesus and the evidence that he was known in Kashmir under the name of Yus Asaf, there must be some other evidence of Mother Mary's presence in this strange and beautiful land, and again, remarkably, so it is. There is in fact in the northwest province of Pakistan a town called Murree, that lies on the southern slopes of the western Himalayas as they ascend towards the northeast, towards Kashmir. It is a town of breathtaking views, as the snowy peaks of nearby Kashmir can be seen on a clear day. This town was, until 1875, called Mary, and it is so named after a famous ancient gravesite in that area. The grave now lies next to a defense tower and is to this day called Mai Mari Dastan, which means the resting place of Mother Mary. I would like now to show a particular clip from a documentary from the BBC4 that ran a few years ago about the link between Jesus Christ, Kashmir and Yus Asaf.
But if Jesus did leave Palestine, France still doesn't seem a likely destination. It was, after all, a Roman colony. Some claim that if Jesus did survive the crucifixion, his first priority would be to escape from the jurisdiction of the Roman Empire.
You just look at a map. Palestine is on the far eastern border of the Roman Empire. If you go west, you're going right into the heart of Roman territory, where we have our 15 legions stationed around the world. If you go east, you're crossing over into Parthia, and you're going towards Persia, eventually India and Afghanistan, that direction.
And if Jesus thought he was the Jewish Messiah, there was another reason why he might have traveled east.
People forget that the Messiah's got to do essentially two things. Everyone remembers he's got to bring world peace and justice and defeat evil. That's all the way through the prophets. When the Messiah comes, he's the Prince of Peace. But the other huge task is he's got to gather all the scattered tribes of Israel back to the land of Israel. Now, this takes a bit of explaining, but it's not too complicated. The people we know today as the Jews are only one tribe, the tribe of Judah. And we have in the Hebrew Bible the story of 10 of the tribes being taken away to the east, to the northeast, by the Assyrians in the 8th century BC. They become known in history as the lost tribes because nobody knows exactly what happened to them. We do, though, we can speculate that if Jesus thought of himself as the Messiah, he might have had in mind, I've got to go and present myself to these dispersed brothers and sisters off wherever they might be.
The journey east from Israel in the 1st century was surprisingly easy, by land or by sea, on the Silk Route or the Spice Route. But if Jesus travelled or returned to the east, surely there would be legends like those in the south of France to support the idea. And of course, there are such traditions. In fact, the people here in Kashmir called their tribe Beni Israel and claim to be descendants of the lost tribes. And here there are stories that in the 1st century, Isa, known locally as Yus Asaf, meaning leader of the healed, returned to Kashmir in his 30s. Yus Asaf's ministry here can easily be seen as a continuation of the Jesus ministry.